In today's video, we'll explore the potential of applying clinically validated decision support tools using ChatGPT. There exist many clinically validated decision support tools. Unfortunately, they are usually not built into the EHR. One of the major roadblocks is that the data needed for these calculators is structured, but it often exists as a narrative or at best mixed format in the electronic healthcare record. First, let's take at the Wells criteria for determining predisposability of a pulmonary embolism. Here we have a completely narrative history and physical exam. Let's take a look at the Wells criteria. All these elements need to be in the discrete form. Our history is 100% narrative. So our first criteria is clinical signs of DVT. As we see, the note doesn't make any note of that, except we do note a +1 pitting edema. Our second criteria is a heart rate greater than 100. It is documented in our note at HR 105. Next criteria is immobilization in the last 3 days or history or surgery in the last 4 weeks. We see that patient had a hip replacement 3 weeks ago. Now for the negatives, previous objectively diagnosed PE or DVT. Our note addresses this, but it actually says there is no history of VTE. It does not make a mention of PE or DVT. Next, we have history of hemoptysis. Our note shows that there is no hemoptysis. However, this word hemoptysis is separated by cough and fever. Finally, the two most interesting elements are not addressed explicitly in the history, but they are implied. One is our clinical gestalt of predisposability of the pulmonary embolism and previous history of malignancy, which again is addressed implicitly. To use ChatGPT to evaluate this problem, the first thing we need to do is we need to construct a prompt. In the prompt, I like to give the ChatGPT an identity. You are a family doctor evaluating a patient. Calculate the Wells score, only list the positive findings and the total score. Now our history. Let's compare ChatGPT analysis to our own clinical analysis. We both came up with a Wells criteria of 9. There are a couple of things I would like to highlight. Number one is we didn't have to teach ChatGPT what is Wells criteria. It is part of its knowledge. Number two is why these technologies are game-changing compared to the ways we used to do things previously. ChatGPT does not match string, it really matches meaning. We can see this very clearly here, clinical signs and symptoms of DVT. Our note basically noted a physical exam finding that ChatGPT was able to interpret as a sign of DVT. Similarly, we did not explicitly say that patient doesn't have history of malignancy. We said patient doesn't have any significant past medical history. Finally, probably the most impressive thing that ChatGPT does, it really takes the totality of the history and interprets this for us. So for example, here we have alternative diagnosis is less likely than PE. ChatGPT took the totality of the history and says, this seems to be the case based on the provided data. As ChatGPT and other language models get integrated into electronic healthcare records, this is going to allow physicians to use the tools that we already have a lot more efficiently.